you have to go into the places that you least want to go in order to find the things that you most need to find in your life. Because if the places that you needed to go were fun to go to, you'd have already found the meaning and the purpose of your life. You'd have already found why you are the way that you are. The things that you most need to find are going to be found in the places that you least want to go. And that comes through, as the articles talk about, deep introspection to figure out why we are the way that we are. And hopefully you can kind of get curious enough about yourself to do that before a tragedy strikes, to find out why I am the way that I am, so that you can avoid tragedies. There's various degrees of mental illness. You have personality disorders. Personality disorders are different from having a mental illness. A personality disorder would just be like a person who, like a psychopath, for example, would be personality disorder. But that wouldn't be a neurosis in that sense. In other words, it wouldn't be mental illness. It would be a personality disorder would be someone who sees things differently, but it's not based off of something like a mood disorder. So, like for example, depression. Depression could be mental illness. It could be caused by mental illness. But somebody who is like a narcissist, that's a personality disorder. So you can have a person who has a personality disorder, they're narcissistic, then they also have a mood disorder like depression, something like that. So the point of it is that the stuff that's not a personality disorder is based off of a misunderstanding of the world around you. So for example, if you have a high level of anxiety, people have, what would cause a person to have a high level of anxiety? Well, if you doom scroll, for example, and you see how horrible the world is and how now it's climate change, is going to kill us all. But it's going to kill us all unless COVID kills us first. But COVID might not kill us first if we just have like a nuclear war before then. But geez, that might actually happen because after Russia invades Ukraine, blah, 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 blah. And you doom scroll, and all of a sudden you're anxious and you're terrified, and you think, oh my God, the world's going to hell and I'm in it. That's a problem because it doesn't reflect the world. It reflects the world in terms of the individual events that are happening. Is there a war over Ukraine? Yes. Was there COVID? Yes. Was there this? Was there that? Yes, of course. But it's like if you come to school every day, and I'll hear people say this, I think very few people actually believe it. But people will say, we have to worry in the United States that there's going to be a school shooting. There's always going to be a school shooting. They're so incredibly rare. When you see the numbers about school shootings, for example, they say there's been 100 and something school shootings so far this year. Do you know what counts as a school shooting? Do you know how they come to that data? So for example, last year there was a police officer who came to the school and was doing a demonstration for the police cadets. He accidentally shot himself. Which was really funny because there's a video of it. He's he's a big voice. He's telling him, you need to be safe. Because they were talking about how to handle firearms. You need to be safe with these. These things are not a joke. As he holsters it, he shoots himself in the leg. Bang! It's funny because to his credit, he keeps it together really, really well. He's like, is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt? He's checking on everybody else. Then he has to kind of limp out of the room because he shot himself. That is in the books as a school shooting. There was a dude who shot himself it was overnight. It was 2 a.m. or something like that. But he was outside of a school. He shot himself in his car. He just happened to pull over next to a car, in front of a school and shot himself. That's in the books as a school shooting. So when they talk about these things, we've had hundreds of these things already. That's what they're talking about. So how often does somebody walk into a school and do something like that? Very rarely. Very rare. But you wouldn't know that. So in other words, you get a sense of reality. Reality is scary. Someone can walk in here and shoot us at any second, and you genuinely believe that, and you're genuinely nervous about it. That's anxiety. That's going to be a mood disorder, because it doesn't correspond to reality. Now, if you're living in a war zone, and bombs are going off, people are being killed every day, and you develop PTSD. That's a real thing because that's a real reality. But oftentimes we get caught up on the things that are just not real, and we let them wrap our minds up, and they stop us from actually finding truth. But there's no real truth there. But the person who's mentally ill, they aren't the voluntary happy seeker of truth. In other words, people don't just sit there all of a sudden and go, oh wow, I'm mentally ill, let me find out why, and they're happy about it. The only time that we actually go investigating ourselves usually is when we think that there's something wrong with us. Like, I genuinely mean it. I wonder if anybody's ever sat here and said, I'm really happy with my life. Let me think and examine myself. Let me examine my personality to find out why I'm so happy and why things are going so well for me right now. We don't usually do that. Usually, we don't start to examine ourselves until we look around and we realize that something has gone catastrophically wrong. You're in like your, I don't know, like third or fourth relationship in a row that's gone, not just broken up, but has gone like tragically badly. It's at that point that typically we'll sit there and ask ourselves, what's wrong with me? How come this stuff keeps happening to me? I mean, you ever have like a whole bunch of good stuff happen to you and you're like, why me? Why does all this good stuff happen to me? Probably not. We only ever ask that. We only ever ask that when we realize that there might be something wrong with me now. Does that mean there is something wrong with you? I don't know that I'd say wrong with you. So for example, if you're like 4 or 5 relationships deep and every single relationship you're getting cheated on, is it your fault that people cheat on you? No. But understand that there are people who go their whole lives in relationships and never get cheated on. So it's a good thing to ask yourself, why me? What is it about my personality that keeps attracting people like that? What is it about me that accepts certain behaviors that almost justify it? In other words, what excuses do I make? I have a good friend of mine who has spent the last, do my math on this, 2.5 years just in an absolute spiral of a life because she broke up with this dude. As few details as possible. I was talking with her about it when she finally broke off with him, and I was asking her kind of what happened. He had cheated on her like 3 times, but the first 2 times she like excused it and she blamed herself. So what did she do? She trained him to believe it was okay to do that she would always accept it. So finally, in the 3rd time, she said, "No, I'm done," and she broke off with him. And he didn't really work. He was just kind of a deadbeat, And then he started harassing her online, calling her a whore, calling her a slut, calling her all these things. And she would like forward me the messages and be like, this is what he's saying. And then, at that point, she was asking me like, what's wrong with me? Why would this be happening to me? And I said, it's not that there's something wrong with you, but you did tolerate it a lot at the beginning. You put up with it. And what do you think is going to happen? You think a person like that's going to change? And I asked her, how long into your relationship did you do it the first time? And she said, it's like 2 or 3 months. So that's pretty early on. They were together for a few years. So you can now imagine how many times over the years he did this. And so a few months ago, I was talking with her because she kind of disappeared for a while. And then she reemerged, and I asked her how she was doing. And she's like, I don't know, Scanlon. That's all she said. I don't know, Scanlon. ... I go, well, what happened? What happened was she kind of started hanging out with him again. Yeah. And then he started being a jerk to her again. And I'm like, dude, this guy was like saying the worst things that you can imagine about her, and to her friends, and all this terrible stuff. After he behaved this way. And I'm thinking, well, what do you suppose you taught him now? He can always come back. He can always find his way back in. You're always going to accept it. And I said, yes, he's a terrible person, but you've got to look inside yourself and find out, examine yourself. Find out what is it about you that you not just tolerate that, but you actually welcome it in your life. There's a lack of self-esteem and that's a big part of what it is. She's really pretty. She doesn't accept it about herself. She's very smart. She doesn't accept it about herself. She has an incredible job. There's a long story short. She works for a very wealthy person over in La Jolla. This person comes from a lot of money. We'll put it that way. This person had a personal assistant, and she paid the personal assistant almost $80,000 a year, and that person's job was just to help organize her schedule. That was it. The personal assistant actually hired her to be their personal assistant so they could work less. So the personal assistant had a personal assistant. The personal assistant got fired, was doing some terrible stuff. So then the boss said, you want to be my personal assistant? So she's like, okay. She's like in her early 20s. So she gets this job where she's like 22, whatever she was, and it's paying her $80,000 a year. The average income in California is about $45,000. So it's paying her almost double the average salary, and she's only 22. And she's working for a very successful person who's saying, not only do you have this job, but I'm going to teach you how to do what I do. I'm going to teach you how to become successful. I'm going to introduce you to all the right people who you need to know. There's this massive opportunity that she has. And she says to me, I don't know why I would have this opportunity. And moreover, she's like, I don't know why I can't just accept that something good that happened to me. And she's done a few things to kind of screw it up. She's got a DUI. I'll leave it at that. She has a few things in her life. And as I talk with her, it's always the same thing. There's like this self-deprecation where she's like, I don't know why I can't just accept good things that happen to me. I always have to find something wrong. And then I always find myself going into the direction of the wrong stuff. She's not the voluntary, happy seeker of truth. She's not sitting there going like, oh man, I can't wait to find out what's wrong with me. She's having to go into the darkest places of her personality to find out why she is the way that she is. And I don't make you many promises, but I will make you this one promise. The things that you have to go into the places that you least want to go in order to find the things that you most need to find in your life. Because if the places that you needed to go were fun to go to, you'd have already found the meaning and the purpose of your life. You'd have already found why you are the way that you are. The things that you most need to find are going to be found in the places that you least want to go. And that comes through, as the articles talk about, deep introspection to figure out why we are the way that we are. And hopefully you can kind of get curious enough about yourself to do that before a tragedy strikes, to find out why I am the way that I am, so that you can avoid tragedies. Because if you can seek truth happily, that's true, but you can also be the unhappy seeker of truth. It really is up to you and when you start to do it. And you're going to find a lot of older people who never did that when they were younger, and here they are all of a sudden like in their 40s and 50s trying to figure out, where did life go? How did I let things get to this point? Why am I the way that I am? How come I have a crappy relationship with my kids? How come my family is what it is? How come I can't get ahead in work? What is it that's going on? And all of a sudden they sit there and go, I remember when I was 9 years old. And they delve back that far. So you can find out why you are the way that you are. And the sooner you start that, I guess this is a way of thinking about it, the bigger head start you have on everybody else. You know, it's kind of like behaving maturely. People say, oh, I want to have no cares. I just want to be a kid and just grow. You can do that. But the person who sits there and says, you know what, I'm going to start putting my life together right now. They're 4, 5, 6, some cases 10 years ahead of the person who finally eventually decides to start sorting themselves out. You know? I have this former student who was telling me that she was talking to a dude, and they were talking about being together, dating, and she told this guy, I'm not looking for a boyfriend, I date for marriage. She was a high school student. What kind of a high school student says something like that? Now, if you're a guy and you're like, I can't, good, check. Actually, not even check, just slash. One more off of the list. Because now you know you're not compatible with that person. That person isn't looking for something serious, you are, and you find out right off the bat, if that's important to you and that scares somebody else away, don't make excuses for them. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. It doesn't mean, oh, you're a terrible person if you're not looking for it. No, it just means that sometimes the tune doesn't fit the chords. And it's better to find out now than to find out 3 or 4 years down the road, and we find ourselves constantly making excuses for them, and then we wonder, how come they cheated on me? Is it because I made excuses for them all along? Again, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't even mean that you're a great person. It just means that you're not compatible. But if that person sits there and says, yeah, me too. Oh, check. You're on the same page. Because I have ambitions in life and I want someone to help sharpen me. Yeah, I know it. That's exactly what I'm looking for too. Check. And you can build up from there. So anyway, I would just suggest you lastly that student of mine who said that's a student who knows herself pretty well. I think she's going to be she'll be all right in life. She'll do well. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?